Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Tangled Rights. I am your host, Justin W. Wilson, along with my co-host, Shane D. Cox. Today, we are going to get into some different stuff. We've been kind of thinking about things that people are interested in hearing about, things that are fun to talk about, and also topics where people are familiar. So there was a lawsuit that was pretty popular pretty recently. It's John C. Depp II versus Amber Laura Heard. What that is a civil lawsuit between two people. The difference between civil and criminal is that the state's not involved. It's just two people that are suing each other under a various theory of tort liability. Tort is just, well, actually, Shane, what is tort? Tell me what tort is.
What is a tort? Is that an acronym for something?
I don't know. You tell me.
Okay. No, tort is not an acronym. It's basically injury law. Not injury per se, physical injury, but could be financial injury as well. It's one person causing a harm to another person. So definitely not a contract. Contract law is kind of a separate thing. So a tort, the classic thing you think of is negligence. Car accident claims are the biggest example of that. That's negligence is a type of tort. Defamation is another type of tort because it could hurt someone's reputation, their goodwill in community. It's their ability to maybe get future work. In this specific example,
it was defamation.
It was defamation. Johnny Depp got fired from at least one job that we know of.
And then I believe part of the and I'm not going to go through all the facts of it. I'm going to speak broad brush here because we're not going to devote an entire episode to one case. And that case was big enough and long enough that we'd probably need a couple of episodes to go through all the ins and outs. But the big picture thing here is that Heard said something about Depp in a way that was public that caused him harm. Basically, she told a story about Depp that, as you said, he lost one job he was on, but my recollection was that he lost opportunity at other jobs.
That's true too.
And so the difference here is, and this is the thing that a lot of people, we get calls on regularly, and unfortunately sometimes I have to tell people, yes, you have a cause of action, a very valid one. However, you don't have damages, right? And with Johnny Depp, because his job is not typical, he's a prominent actor. I didn't look this up, but I know that other actors I've looked up, randomly movies that are cool. I'm like, oh, I wonder what that guy got paid. They're getting paid $7, $10, $15 million per movie.
Johnny Depp was getting paid a lot, and he will continue to be paid a lot, hopefully now.
But. Correct. I mean, didn't he, after the lawsuit, he did another movie like almost immediately. I think he got picked up for something that he was... And I'm not, I like him as an actor. He's in a lot of good stuff that I think is great. One of my favorite movies of all time, actually, came out in 1986, same year I was born. Shout out. Platoon. He had a very small role in it, but I thought it was pretty good. He did a great job. His name was Lerner in that movie. If you've ever seen it, it's got Charlie Sheen, Tom Berenger, Willem Dafoe, Forrest Whitaker. A lot of guys when they were really young. It was a good movie.
Wasn't the year I was born, so.
Oh, you don't care about it?
Yeah.
I had that thing on VHS, bro.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, so defamation in Virginia, which is where the lawsuit was heard. No? All right, whatever. Our Section 8.01-45, all words shall be actionable from which their usual construction and commonplace acceptance are construed as insults and tend to violence and breach of the peace. However, there's a justification and mitigation section, and I'm not going to read this one all the way, but it's Section 8.01-46 that says that the defendant may justify by proving that the words were true. And I recall from law school, they teach you these general concepts in torts. Torts is a class you take. It's where you learn about battery, negligence, defamation, slander, libel, all sorts of things. I remember that one of the main defenses to defamation is truth, and that works for slander and libel as well. Slander is spoken, libel is written. So basically, if I went to somebody in the courts, like the judges or whatever, and said, you know what, my partner Shane Cox, he has the hairline of an 18-year-old, but the face of a 45-year-old, and they got upset by that. And they were like, you know what, I'm not going to rule for Shane anymore because he has a 45-year-old's face. But it turns out it's true. He can't sue me, right?
It is true. Another
So
callback
say
would
the
be
internet trolls.
another callback would be if an attorney were to sue somebody over a comment that said he had a small member.
Oh my God.
I won't finish that thought.
That happened here, didn't it?
Yes.
We talked about this once already, didn't we?
We talked about it.
That's such a wild thing. Anyway, so basically, Amber Heard said things about Johnny Depp that interfered with his ability to work. He was initially claiming $100 million in damages. They'd been together for quite a long time. They got married in 2015. Some strange things came out during the trial, as they always do when you're dealing with domestic relationships. I don't know too many people that don't have some kind of eccentricities in their relationship that's unique to them, that if other people heard it would be viewed strangely. However,
you wouldn't want them to be made public. I'm sure there's something
Correct.
in your relationship that you don't want to be public.
yeah, I mean, there's stuff in my personal life. Hell, if I am walking around my house, making up little songs about doing the dishes, it's not that big a deal. But do I want people to hear me doing stupid stuff? No. Even though I just put myself on blast for that one. But I actually think that's kind of a funny thing that I do. I do that.
Everything you do is funny, Justin.
To me, because I have to entertain myself. Only child stuff. Don't worry about it, guys. Anyway, so he was alleging a lot of damages. She countersued. Shane, what's a countersuit?
A countersuit is when a defendant or a responding party sues the person back, says, your words are like glue. They can't stick to me, but they'll stick to you, baby.
Heck yeah. So she sued him for the same sort of thing. It went through the trial that there were 3 instances of defamation that Depp raised. He wanted $50 million for that, and then I believe the other $50 million in punies. Shane, what are punitive damages?
Punies is what we call punitive damages, and they are specific damages intended to punish someone who does kind of an egregious act. Classic example is if somebody is DUI, drinking and driving, that is a per se or automatic violation where you can get punitive damages to punish someone for driving under the influence, because that's something that in our society we say definitely not.
So somebody who drinks and drives automatically gets punitive damages?
Not automatically, but that is in our statute here in Nevada. It is something that
Is actionable.
can be pled, will not be dismissed.
Okay, but don't they first have to get in a car crash?
They do have to get in a car crash. No,
So-
I'm saying as a result of the DUI causing a wreck, you get to add a prayer, which is a request for punitive damages.
Correct. And the reason that I asked that question that way to Shane, because he was being general, right? And we hear this a lot. He presupposed that there was a car crash. Obviously, we wouldn't be talking about civil damages with a criminal matter unless there was a civil element. But the reason I asked that was to kind of illustrate that sometimes when you're talking about the law, especially when you're doing it in a relatively quick way, as we have to here, we're constrained by time unless you guys want to just watch us for 24 hours straight.
No.
You don't. We sort of gloss over some topics. So I understand that leaves a little bit for you to fill in, but context does matter. And when we're saying things, if there is a contextual element to it, you should probably follow along and kind of presume that that's sort of what we're talking about, especially when it's something like the interchange between criminal and civil law. Okay, so one of the strange things that came out during the trial was that Amber, during one of their domestic spats, had left Mr. Depp a present in his bed.
Defecation.
Do you recall that?
Defecation. Yeah.
Different than defamation.
No, defecation.
Right, I'm saying that's different than defamation.
Oh, yes, it is. Defecation, defamation.
Not the same.
2 different things, but both parts of this trial.
Correct. And you could use 2 different dictionaries, right? For example, for defamation, if you wanted to know what that is, you can look in Black's Law Dictionary. I don't know what edition they're on right now, but that is kind of a dictionary for legal terms, right? And then you'd probably just want to look in Merriam-Webster's or maybe National Geographic for what defamation or defecation means, right?
Poop.
Pooping. Everybody poops, Shane.
Talking about poop. I don't think women poop.
So Amber pooped in Johnny Depp's bed. And that came out. I didn't really watch the whole thing. I was, obviously I have a
You have a life?
well, not that. I have a pretty busy job, Sometimes I wasn't able to do it to see what I wanted to see because it's interesting. Not that I care. I mean, I like Johnny Depp as an actor, but I don't know the dude. He seems a little weird. He says weird things sometimes. His style is strange, but I'm sure he'd be fun to be around.
He's Jack Sparrow.
He is Jack Sparrow. I actually just rewatched all the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, like in a row.
Wow.
I do that sometimes. Just randomly get a wild hair and I just start watching some random thing. I did all the Marvel movies recently. Took me like 4 weeks, but all my free time for then. Anyway, so the jury came back and found that Johnny Depp's side was a little bit more credible than Amber Heard's. They awarded him $10 million in compensatory damages and $5 million in punitive damages, but that was reduced to $350,000 per the state limit in Virginia. Now, speaking of punitive damages generally, obviously every state's a little bit different. Virginia has that $350,000 cap. But do you know of any law or general framework that courts use to where punitive damages could be too excessive?
Definitely.
Do you remember that from law school?
I remember that, yes.
Okay, what are we talking about here?
Well, specifically here in Nevada, going back to the drinking and driving and causing an accident, the state law here says that punitive damages can be uncapped. That means that it can be any amount that a jury intends to award. In punitive damages, you look at the financial condition of the person who has done the bad act. So there was an example here in Nevada where a very, very rich man was out drinking and driving and caused a lot of damage to a lot of individuals. And insurance doesn't typically cover punitive damages. They usually exclude that. So the only way that you can maybe really recover punitive damages is against somebody who has money, like in this instance. So the court looks into, hey, does this guy have money? Because if so, what amount is going to punish him and cause him to not do this again? So with someone with a lot of money, they get a look at your bank records, your income, what holdings you might have, and they get to consider that, and the jury would be able to consider that and give you an appropriate punishment. So punitive damages, definitely a high bar to hit. In the case of drinking and driving, uncapped, but in other instances, they will be capped at a certain multiplier. Usually it's a multiplier of what your other damages are. So like in the example of Johnny Depp, if he had 10 million, it could be a multiplier, depends on state law, 2 times that, 3 times that, an equal amount, or like in Virginia, they actually have an amount,
Sure.
350,000. So it just depends. The Supreme Court has said that it can't be.
There is a cap, and I was actually looking at that because I wanted to make sure that I was remembering correctly. I found several cases, but one of them is BMW of North America Inc. versus Gore 517 US 559 from 1996. There was a $2 million punitive award where the compensatory damages were only $4,000, and they struck that down. Essentially, when the damages for the punitives are so much higher than the compensatory, excluding certain circumstances, it's going to be a violation of the 14th Amendment due process. And in that one, they said there's a 3-part test where the first prong is how bad the defendant's conduct was, the ratio of punitive damages to actual harm, and the size of the award compared to the statutory sanctions for similar conduct. So there could be an instance, and this is the one that I remembered, State Farm versus Campbell, where they said a 9-to-1 ratio is acceptable.
It's people come to us and think that there's so many, like, we know exactly what the limit is going to be. The Supreme Court has never said, hey, 12 times, that's the answer. That's too excessive.
But
or
they
15,
have affirmatively said 9-to-1 is okay in certain circumstances.
9-to-1, okay, in that instance with those specific set of facts, which hopefully next time 9-to-1 is okay. But there's so much unknown, and that's because every case has its specific facts that are not going to be the exact same. So
correct. And in the State Farm case I was just talking about, what they were doing is striking down a 145-to-1 ratio, where the compensatory damages were $1 million and 145 in punitives. That's a pretty high award.
That's
but there's the one that everybody thinks of, right? The McDonald's case.
Yeah, but those were real damages. Were there punitives
There
in
were
there as
punitive
well?
damages, but the thing that people don't understand when they look at it was like 86 million in punitive damages. The jury awarded the gal the punitive damages, which equated to 1 day of McDonald's coffee sales. That's it. And when you hear it, you think 86 million. Oh my goodness, how'd you get that for getting burned? Let me be clear. She got third-degree burns in a very sensitive area, and she was like 90 years old. But the damages were related to something tangible, right? It's not punitives in the sense that it's just off the wall. Hey, I want to punish you. They were able to ground it in, hey, we think that because of the processes they were doing with those particular coffee procedures, this is fair. And I know it got overturned, not on those grounds though. It was something else. Anyway, back to Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. He got a total of 10,350,000, and Heard's counterclaims were found to be actionable, and she was awarded $2 million in compensatory damages and zero in punitive damages. There were basically statements made by Johnny Depp's lawyers in newspapers. I believe it was The Sun and a couple of others, which I think they called her a gold digger and other stuff like that. Some not nice words.
But she wasn't a gold digger, huh?
I mean, she was an actress. She had her own career. And what even is a gold digger? What does that mean? Was she out panning for gold in the Yukon? No. No, I mean, it's such a tough one, right? That's an amorphous term to try and define.
Hey, she won.
She did, but ultimately she didn't, because she's ordered to pay $8,350,000 more than she received. I'm no mathematician, but if I get $2 million and then have to give away $8 million, I think I lose.
I'm not a math doctor either, so.
No. But yeah, that was an interesting case, partially because it's two people that folks have like feelings for, even though they don't know them, kind of like athletes or whatever. You kind of develop a affection for them because you like watching them, or you like their interviews, like their movies, whatever it is. So you side with one or the other. I mean, we all sort of do it, right?
What is Amber Heard's big show or movie? I don't know if I heard of her before.
Aquaman, and she was in something else.
But right before?
I mean, I'm going to check her out.
All I know is Aquaman. She's been in smaller things, but Aquaman.
Sure. There's got to be.
I mean, she was kind of famous for being married to Johnny Depp, though, right?
I think so. 3 Days to Kill, Drive Angry, The Rum Diary. She was in The Stand, that miniseries that was awesome. Really loved it. The remake of the Stephen King book, which was great. Big fan of that. And that was recently. She was in Zombieland. She was in a ton of stuff. She was in Pineapple Express, apparently.
Oh, we talked about that one.
Yeah, good movie.
I don't remember her.
I'm just on her IMDb. She goes all the way back to 2004. So she's been doing stuff.
I'll go back to something you said a little bit ago, and you talked about people who might have claims but not damages.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's hard to prove damages, and sometimes it needs an opinion of an expert. You would need an expert to come and say, okay, these damages exist because Johnny had the ability to get these jobs and didn't. But paying for experts is not cheap. When you have a big claim like Johnny Depp did, or he has millions of dollars, paying for an expert to come out and testify for you, $10,000, $20,000, drop in the bucket. For a case that somebody's bringing to us that doesn't have that kind of cash, then it's a difficult hill to climb.
Well, sometimes it's as simple as a math equation, right?
It could be.
And for the person who's dealing with it, I understand that it's not that simple. But I have to break it down to them in a way that's practical. Because my job, when I'm looking at a civil case, is to try and make them as whole as I possibly can. And one of the things that I tell people when they come in and they're like, you can tell that they want to be put back where they were before, whether it's a personal injury case. And that's usually what we deal with. We have a few civil cases that are not personal injury. They're different. But primarily people are like, hey, my back is in a lot of pain because I was rear-ended. I wish that I could go throw the football like I did again, or go to the gym and not come home and have to ice my back for 2 days and skip the gym the next day, right? Like that I'm laid up for 3 days for every 1 day of activity. But the thing I have to tell him is like, look, no matter what we do, this is all a legal fiction. We are not going to have a Harry Potter wand that we can wave and make you magically better. The judge isn't going to say, all right, you win, we're going to reverse time for you. They're just going to compensate you in one way or the other, which practically the money translates into medical care for people who might not be able to afford it. Kind of like those same folks, if they don't have the money for an expert, they might not have the money for an orthopedic surgeon or something like that. Like when you see like with that case where we had the slap tear, right? And he's got the work comp case as well. I don't know if he would have been able to afford that surgery.
Right.
Maybe not. So he was able to be repaired through the insurance company's money and given some afterwards, but it doesn't undo it, right? He's still going to carry those scars for the rest of his life. And so you have to look at it from a practical standpoint. What do you really want to achieve out of this? And in a case, looking at your example where let's just use round numbers, you've got $10,000 worth of damages, but it's going to cost you $15,000 for an expert. Is that worth it for you? And you have to, it's been a terrible conversation I've had to have, and I'm not doing it to be cold or callous to say that your opinion and your feelings on this matter aren't invalid. It's just a purely input versus output question. And I've never had somebody say, oh, well, when you say it that way, I completely understand. And yeah, you're right, it won't be worth it. Because another thing I think that a lot of them are looking for when they have these kinds of cases is a little bit of closure, right? They want this chapter done, they want it over with, and they want to be better. And sometimes done and over with simply means accepting and moving on, which sucks. Those are some of the worst conversations. I think the absolute worst conversation I've had with somebody in a civil context is when someone comes to you and they're very hurt and they don't have their own health insurance. They have no way to get better, and there's no insurance coverage. Because you have to tell them they don't have uninsured motorist or underinsured motorist, which is UIM. I'll have you explain that in just a second. And then the third party, the person that hit them, doesn't have any coverage. Nothing they can do. You're left there holding the bag with no ability to get better. And I hate that conversation. I do. I hate it. I remember the very first time I ever had to do it at the firm we met at. I hated it. And they made me go do it. And I was like, why are you making me do this? I'm new to this. I just came out of criminal law. I don't know. I mean, I guess I was used to talking to victims and trying to console them whenever some bad stuff had happened. So it was okay, but it was just an awful conversation to have.
Right. Yeah. I mean, being a victim of a crime, putting away somebody's not going to fill the hole that you have either.
It doesn't change anything.
So,
It does not undo time.
but yeah, going back to uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage, just real quick, definitely buy that, because if you get hit by somebody uninsured, you might not have a way to collect anything. So,
Or to get better.
or you got to pay for your own doctors. You got to pay for your own car getting fixed, possibly. So uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage here in Nevada is where you can pay. You have to pay for this, but in the instance that you do get hit, you can still collect. You still can go get treatment, and there's different amounts you can get. The state minimum here in Nevada is $25,000 per person, $50,000 per accident. It can go up to $100,000, $250,000. Make sure you're covered in these instances, though, because I've had to use it. I know Austin's had to use it too. You can't control when you're getting rear-ended, and the drivers here in Nevada are bad.
So say insurance companies.
They are bad drivers. We've all seen them. So just be safe. Go get that coverage so Justin doesn't have to tell you, hey, there's no insurance coverage. There's nothing we can do for you.
I really hate those conversations.
This guy's driving without insurance, or he has these plates from last year and he's never going to get real plates. We've seen a ton of those here recently. It's crazy.
All right. So let's tie it back into the Amber Heard thing. We got a question on this. To the part where she made poo in Johnny's bed. Is that illegal? Could she be tried for that? Could she be subject to criminal liability?
I don't see anyone that would charge for that.
It'd be a strange one. My thought when I initially just thought through it, sure, there might be some kind of health code violation, but the real question is it Johnny's property? or is it her property? Because they were married at the time.
Yeah.
So if it's both of their bed, it's not going to be vandalism. It's not going to be trespassing. It's not public urination or defecation, which is covered in Virginia. I'm looking at their codes right now to see if I went ahead and Googled it to see if,
As you should.
Yeah, my search history is so weird.
How do
I literally
you-
typed in pooping in someone's bed, Virginia criminal law.
How do you prove that that's intentional too? I'm sure there's some kind of intent act, because if I accidentally poop the bed as a weekly occurrence for me. What the hell? Just kidding. Sorry.
Get a diaper, bro.
Yeah.
That 45-year-old is starting to sound more like 85. So it doesn't seem like it would be actionable. I mean, I think that it's something that probably is going to only result in civil liability. And truthfully, and this is another funny one, because like it's true, or it was deemed true by a jury. So he's not getting in trouble for saying it, but the only thing that she's going to have is public shame for deciding that she was upset and that was how she was going to.
I'm sure the statute of limitations has run, though.
Criminally? Oh, yeah. It would certainly only be a misdemeanor. It's not a felony.
And misdemeanors here, 1 year. 1 year. That statute ran. You can talk about it all you want.
And obviously, check your jurisdiction when looking at statute of limitations.
Please.
Statute of limitations exists both in criminal and civil law. And what it means is that there is a time frame for certain claims or crimes that you can be held liable for those claims or crimes. As he said, a misdemeanor in the state of Nevada is 1 year. It goes up to 3 for felonies, and certain felonies are lifetime, like as long as time is going. Murder, I believe rape, certain sexual assault crimes. I know that Kansas just changed something where it used to be 10 years from the time that they turned 18 that the victim could bring charges and civil suits, but now it's until they're in their, I think it's in their 30s. And then the civil suit, I believe, it got extended. I can't remember how it went. I just know that we picked up 2 cases in Kansas recently that we're working on right now for sex assault that occurred to somebody, and they're suing we're getting ready to sue civilly for that. And the reason that they were able to do it, this person was assaulted and then basically was pressured by the family not to say anything because it's a fellow family member. And then they changed the law after she got far enough away from the family that, she kind of changed her opinion on what she wished she would have done when she was younger. Now she can it's actionable.
And that's going back to last week, talking about children a lot. Statute of limitations usually don't run for a child until that amount of time after they turn 18. So if it's normally a 2-year statute of limitations, you can wait till your 20th birthday to file a suit.
Right.
So,
and the reason being because they presume that when you're under 18, you can't sue anyway.
you can't. You're not allowed to.
You should have that applicable amount of time from the time that you're an adult and able to make your own legal decisions, correct?
Right. And then you can go see an attorney now that you're on your own, 18, 19, and you can go back and file a suit for a previous claim.
The unfortunate element of that, though, is that sometimes what will happen is your claim, yes, it's valid legally. You're not going to get beaten on a motion to dismiss for violating the statute of limitations when you bring the lawsuit, but your claim could be stale. And by stale, I that's not a legal term I'm using. I'm just saying it's stale in the sense that
The evidence might be
gone or bad.
gone.
You might not have done what you would have otherwise done if you would have had an active claim while you were actively dealing with those damages, whether that be something like defamation or the physical injury from a negligence claim. Say you just got better and you didn't get any medical treatment the way you would have, or you got partially better. It's going to be real hard to prove. Let's say someone was 12, right? And they're in a car wreck. Their mom didn't want to sue. They turn 18 and they're like, you know what? My back still hurts from the time that I was in a car wreck when I was 12 or whatever, my hip. I would like to go get that treated. It's going to be a real tough sell because juries seem to not find that as believable. I think in that circumstance, it might be a little different than somebody who, like, let's say the statute of limitations here was 10 years for adults for a civil case. If somebody 8 years after the fact said, oh, I want to sue for this, I think in that instance, it might be a little bit easier, but still it's going to be a hard sell.
Definitely. But wanted to explain that's a discrepancy in the law for minors that allow them to still bring a suit after they do turn 18 and are on their own or making their own decisions or.
Correct. So, yeah, Amber Heard, Johnny Depp, it was a crazy lawsuit. It was very publicized. And the other thing you have to think about when you see these things is that sometimes you don't get the full picture unless you're actually watching the trial. And this secondary element that I always think about whenever I'm watching a trial, you don't always know what's not being presented to the jury. They use these things called motions in limine, which is just a fancy way of saying motions to limit. And it's literally limiting evidence for various reasons, whether that be because the evidence is too prejudicial or it violates some kind of evidentiary rule, for example, hearsay. There's a ton of different reasons that you can limit that you can limit evidence through motion. And so when you watch the trial, even as someone who has conducted 8 jury trials, and I have a decent understanding of them. I'm no expert by any means, but I'm know my way around them. I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, what am I not seeing? Because sometimes you can kind of pick up gaps when they're telling the story, and it's always interesting because I really wish that I could get a full picture view, but sometimes you can't.
It'd be fun to be on a jury.
I have only gotten called one time, and I was moving back to Kansas. It was when I'd moved back because I was back for a year, and I was moving on a Thursday, and they wanted me to report on Monday. I was so mad.
You wouldn't have been picked.
Maybe. That federal civil trial we did, there was an attorney general for the state of Nevada was on the jury veneer, and we didn't strike her because she's a civil attorney. She's great for us because it was a breach of contract claim in a first party case. I was sure the other side was going to strike her. They didn't. She was our foreman. We won.
Really?
Mm-hmm. It was perfect. Who better to understand breach of contract than an attorney who deals with contracts? Thank you, defense firm, for making my job easier.
They worked out.
Never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake.
Sun Tzu.
Brilliant guy.
Let's talk about this young thug.
Young thug.
Let's skip to that. I like that one.
Okay.
In the news this week was an attorney for Young Thug, the rapper. There's a big old criminal case.
He's got RICO charges.
He has RICO charges.
RICO charges are when the state or federal government can incorporate other defendants through RICO, the RICO Act, saying that they acted in concert. And I'm obviously speaking broad brush here. I'm not going to dive into RICO, but essentially it's used for things like gangs. I know that RICO has been used with the motorcycle clubs, whether that be like the Hells Angels or somebody like that. When one of them does something wrong, they basically try and bootstrap it. And I'm sure there are very specific very specific elements that need to be met in order to bring the other folks in.
RICO's complicated.
It is complicated.
Have you ever had anybody come in even being charged with a RICO crime?
No. The only reason I've even heard of it is law school and then, these cases like this. I do know that there was an incident that happened here on the highway where one group was shooting at another group. I can't remember which club it was, but one of them was shooting at another group, and I am friends with the attorney who works for one of those groups. And when I say works for, I mean he's been retained as their attorney in several criminal matters, and they were talking about trying to RICO that particular club. It didn't happen, but they were working on it.
Well, let me just set up RICO a little bit better. Georgia has its own RICO law. Mm-hmm. This is being tried in state court, not federal court, which is a pretty common thing for RICO. But Young Thug is kind of the primary member owner of a record label. Mm-hmm. And that record label is called YSL.
Young Slime Life.
Young Stoner Life.
Oh.
Young Stoner Life. So
why does it say... I'm looking at something in a... It says the 88-page grand jury indictment characterizes YSL as Young Slime Life. Is that what they're... Oh, okay. Maybe the prosecution's spinning it.
Oh.
That is something I would motion out as the defense attorney. That's an example.
Yeah.
I would not allow them to say Young Slime Life to the jury.
Interesting.
Because it's prejudicial. It's incendiary.
Young Stoner Life is the official name of this YSL.
Not much better. But
this trial has had tons of defendants, almost 20 defendants. Some have pled out, some have taken deals. This trial has been trying to seat a jury since December of last year, and the case has been going on and on. Testimony's been going. Young Thug's kind of the primary one now as the owner of this record label that's accused of ostensibly being a gang. RICO charges kind of started with mafia ties. They wanted to end mafia influence in certain cities. It's called racketeering. It's a made-up word because they're saying that the outfit, this mob, is kind of a racket. So it's kind of something that's fake, not real. They are accepting money to protect businesses, but not really protect them.
Protecting them from themselves.
They're threatening them.
If you pay me, we won't come back and break your knees.
So as part of this trial, something that came out is an attorney had a little fight with a judge, and he was held in contempt.
A little fight?
What this is coercion, witness intimidation, ex parte communications that we have a constitutional right to be present for. So I understand that you're upset towards me, but I don't know what I did.
Mr. Steele, I still want to know, how did you come upon this information? Who told you?
What I want to know is why wasn't I there? Why did
Sir, I'm going to hold you in contempt if you don't tell me who this. Tell me who this information
I don't
was.
want to be held in contempt. Well, I'm not answering that question.
So tell me about ex parte communications, Justin.
Ex parte communications are communications that occur without all of the parties involved. An example is you are the prosecution, I'm the defense, or you're the plaintiff, I'm the defense, and you have a conversation with the judge somewhere that I'm not available about the case. Obviously, if you see the judge on the courthouse steps and say, hey, good morning, how are you today? That's not ex parte communications. But if you see that same judge somewhere, Starbucks, Kmart, whatever, hey, you know that case that we got with Justin? Blah, blah, blah. That's ex parte communication.
And ex parte communications are generally not allowed at all.
Yes, I skipped that part because it's kind of basic, and so I just presume that people understand that, and I should not have done that.
They are not allowed in the slightest.
Big no-no. To the point that even if whenever I'm having an administrative conversation with, let's say, a clerk with the court, when I'm talking about, hey, I just talked to the prosecution, we want to go ahead and get this thing back on calendar. We were in there early today, let's bring it on tomorrow. I always CC them. Even if I literally just spoke to the guy on the phone and said, hey, I'm going to email the judge about this conversation we're having. You cool with that? Absolutely. I still include him in it because it's just a major issue and it can just create a ton of problems.
If one side is talking to the judge about your case and you don't have the opportunity to be there, that is unfair. And so we have
manifest injustice.
We have what are called model rules of professional conduct, and that's kind of like the base rules that most states base their rules off of. So in the model rules and in Georgia rules, in Nevada rules,
and Kansas,
you cannot have a conversation alone with the judge unless there is an emergency situation. And in Georgia's rules, if there is an emergency, the judge has to immediately notify the other party that was not there for the conversation and explain to him or her why, what was the subject of that conversation, why was it important for me to have this private conversation? Because now look at how biased this looks that I'm talking to one person while the other person was not there. The view of it is just looks insane from the outside. I personally, thankfully, haven't had to deal with this. We're very cognizant of that. If we knew about that, a judge would definitely be investigated.
Sure.
Here in Nevada.
The idea is that you have a neutral and detached magistrate, whether it's magistrate or judge. But the idea is that they are not biased. They're not friends with one side and not the other, because that's not how our legal system is supposed to operate. That's why Lady Justice is blind.
So that makes this following story even more insane.
Correct.
This judge over this YSL trial decided to have an ex parte meeting with the prosecution and a witness that was refusing to testify and that witness's attorney. And he did not notify the defendant nor defense counsel. The defense counsel got tipped off about this meeting through means that he was not willing to share. So the defense counsel said this in open court with the prosecution there and said, "Judge, I've heard that you've had an ex parte communication." And this is a pretty short video. We'll put it up on the podcast as well. "I've heard that you've had this ex parte communication." And the judge kind of looked guilty at that point, he said. And instead of saying, yes, but I forgot to mention this important thing. In my rules, I have to notify you. I forgot. Instead,
Did he double down?
The judge said, "Name your source. Who told you this? If you don't tell me, I'm going to hold you in contempt." And so this defense attorney, who seems like a total awesome lawyer, said, "I'm not naming my source.
Gangster stuff.
I'm not on trial. I don't have to answer to you. I'm not on the stand. I'm not naming him or her,
Them.
they, them,
Or they.
whatever. Whoever it is, didn't name the source. Judge said, "You are not answering to me like you should. I'm holding you in contempt. 10 weekends, 2 days per weekend, 20 days in jail for you." And the trial's going to continue. And
The lawyer's going to conduct 5 days of trial and then hang out in jail for 2 days.
after the case is done.
I was going to say, that would probably impact his ability to run his defense.
And
if he's in jail.
an interesting note that I loved about this is that this attorney offered, if Young Thug has to go to jail, that they get to go to jail together. And the judge said, sure.
I love that.
And so put on for your people, man. Like that's amazing. So this attorney, I think Brian Steele is his name, I believe.
That's correct.
The Young Thug has a song where he mentions him too.
I mean,
That's a real lawyer right there. So this is just an insane story that the judge would double down, and instead of saying, "Oops, I forgot, my bad," I'm going to hold you in contempt for doing something. There's no rule that compels him to say, "Hey, how did I hear about this?" And still the judge hasn't said, what was the conversation? He said, we had our court reporter in there, so the court reporter did record what the conversation was. Presumably, it's about not holding this witness in contempt, not throwing him in jail.
sure.
But it doesn't matter.
That's why
it doesn't matter what the conversation was.
That's the point. That's what the part that is so confusing to me is, why would the judge care? I mean, okay, let me back up.
We're not there. We don't know.
I don't know anything.
You cannot.
But
The rules say you can't do this, so he shouldn't do it.
I get that. He shouldn't do it. But why would he care who or if the defense attorney heard about it? It seems like, and I'm gleaning from reading things, the judge cares more about the loyalty of the people he's around, not ratting him out, than he does about following the rules or curing it, which I'm sure if he would have just said, "Hey, you know what? You're right. My bad. Here it is. This is the court reporter's recording. This is exactly what happened. Is that okay, Mr. Steele?" Mr. Steele probably would have been like, "Yeah, that's fine, Your Honor. Thank you for telling me."
And I don't know if the witness is voicing, "Hey, I'm scared of what's going to happen to me if I testify,
Maybe. But
and I can't have the defense attorney there."
we won't know.
Okay, well, we have to have the defense attorney there. I'm going to hold you in contempt.
Yes.
And that is what the judge is supposed to do. And this contempt order, I would imagine there's going to be a writ, which is an appeal, a type of appeal that goes up to
Wait, I thought you had to wait until the case was done to appeal, Sean.
not certain orders. Yeah, well,
You can appeal in the middle?
an order holding you in contempt.
Absolutely.
I don't know Georgia law, but
I'm not saying
that
it's not a writ. I'm just talking. Anytime we have an instance to be able to explain some legal thing that you and I both understand fully, I'm just asking silly questions so that you can highlight it.
Yeah. So a writ is a specific, very specific.
It's a limited
type of
appeal.
It is a very limited appeal. Usually, the court says, "Oh no, you got to wait till the end of the case because if the court gets it right, even though they got this little thing wrong, it's okay.
No big deal.
No harm, no foul."
But
Being held in contempt, that's
Yes.
basically a criminal charge.
it is a criminal charge, and it has criminal implications. And so the way that I think about this to make it really easy to understand is if you think about the case as a string, right? And the string has little offshoots that
You and your analogies.
I make. Shut up, man.
go
That's how my
ahead.
brain works. Case is a string. It starts and it ends, right? At the end of the string, you can obviously file an appeal because it's over. But if you have an offshoot that stops because of this order, for example, this ex parte communication that resulted in criminal imposition of jail time, that's where it ended. So that particular issue, the sub-issue of the main trial, the main case, has ended. It is ripe for appeal because there is no further ruling on it, and it could be dispositive or it could be its own separate issue. Right here, this is going to make law in Georgia. I would almost assume.
Oh, for sure. And let's talk about contempt a little bit, because the fact that the judge has the power to hold anyone in contempt is crazy, not often used, but on occasion, the judge can control their courtroom. They are given the power, everywhere I know, to hold someone in contempt. You talked about it a few episodes ago about a guy that wanted to go to jail that got held in contempt for saying something
Terrible.
extremely homophobic towards the judge.
Awful.
And the judge has the power to do that, because there could be instances where somebody comes in a courtroom and they're just trying to cause problems. And to teach them, the judge is allowed to throw them in jail, throw them a night in jail. This 20 days is crazy.
I am pretty sure they can do anything up to 364.
It's not a felony. Yeah, kind of not a felony. That's
Yeah. So in Nevada, it's NRS 22.010, and it literally just says acts or omissions constituting contempts. Disorderly, contemptuous, or insolent behavior toward the judge while the judge is holding court, or engage in judicial duties in chambers, or toward masters or arbitrators while sitting on a reference or arbitration or other judicial proceeding. Breach of the peace, also in court, or its immediate vicinity, tending to interrupt the due process of court. Disobedience or resistance to lawful writs, orders, or rules of the court. Disobedience to a subpoena served by the court. And I'm not reading the whole thing. Affecting witnesses or other people when the proceedings are happening. Disobedience, abusing the process. Essentially, it's all tied to the in-court behavior, right? Or court-related behavior. I saw a guy not that long ago who he had a misunderstanding at sentencing, which this one was nuts because the judge, it was in Department 11. The judge ended up not holding him in contempt. He obviously had some kind of issues with his cognitive abilities or his functions. She told him that he was going to get probation, which is what the deal was. But the way that she said it, this sentence is what you're going to get. So when you get probation, they impose a sentence, but they suspend it. So she said the sentence, and before he could,
he thought he was going
and
to jail.
he just flipped out. So when I got there, he was in the hallway being held down by two officers, screaming. I guess he'd been banging his head off walls. There was like a face print on the window, and this is on the 11th floor.
Is this the same dude I saw?
It might be the same guy.
Oh man,
Yeah, he was laying on the ground and just like
what did he look like?
white guy.
Look like a gamer nerd.
Yeah, kind
I
of.
saw that dude that day too. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. He was just getting, and they weren't really roughing him up, but they were holding him down, and there was like a whole big deal. There was tons of people out there.
Oh, we were in the same courtroom that day. That's
Yeah,
right. Yeah. He was saying, when I got there a little before you. It was right after that criminal defendant had attacked our judge.
Yeah.
And it was like, what is going on this week?
Dude, there was something in the water.
It was insane. And
But he ended up getting probation.
it was a certain prosecutor that was at both. So
Yeah.
could have been
Yeah, it was him.
old boy Jory.
Shout out. No, he's always so chill. He's a super chill guy with me, and even when I was, at the DA's office, I never saw him as that kind of guy.
No, I'm not saying it is. I went to law school with Jory too. So
There are some prosecutors I've seen, not necessarily here, that they seem to take unnecessary stabs, verbally speaking, when they probably shouldn't. It's like you're already getting a punishment for this person. You don't need to like kind of give them a little kick on top of sending them to jail.
Oh.
I don't know.
We've talked a lot of negative things about cops and prosecutors,
We have not.
but I just want to say we don't think that all are bad either.
No.
We think that there is
I was
there is
one.
the worst of the worst that kind of make the rest look bad, especially police. you
But
know.
that's in every profession.
There's some bad lawyers out there too.
100%.
Oh,
I know a ton of them. Austin knows some as well, probably. You've ran into some bad attorneys?
Probably a few, yeah.
Probably a few. Okay, cool. I know a bad electrician.
What?
I got a buddy back in Kansas who
You can't be a bad electrician for long, can you?
no. He still does stuff, but he was working for an oil company, and they kind of had him doing everything, but he was not an electrician. Well, they had him working on electricity on 440 for pump jack.
Wow.
He got hit hard.
Don't mess with 440.
He's good though. He's great. I expected to see him dead when we went in the hospital, and I walk in and he's giving me a thumbs up, and his hands are all bandaged. It was wild. But yeah, so there's bad people in every profession. The difference is, and this is the point that I was going to make, when you have a bad electrician, obviously there's some pretty negative consequences there. But when you have a bad prosecutor or a police officer, you're dealing with some of the most power that one person can exert over another in a really negative way and in a direct, this is happening right now, right? I'm not stealing your money where you're not going to figure out about it until, you go to retire. It's like today, you're going to go inside that room against your will and hang out there until somebody else lets you out. That, I think, is the issue, is that when you run into these people who are the bad apples, the worst of the worst, they have the ability to impact you in such a horrible way. Like one of the things in the Constitution is liberty, right? To say that they can take your liberty from you is pretty awful.
But there are instances where the public opinion is that a person should be put away, right?
Sure.
So,
Well, we've decided as a society through hundreds of years of social evolution that certain things are not okay, right? Like the fact that there's a tort for battery and a criminal charge for battery says that we view
unwanted touching as bad.
You shouldn't punch somebody. You shouldn't spit in their face. It's not good to allow people to do things like this because A, it's bad in and of itself, and B, it potentially escalates into someone getting seriously hurt, right? You walk up and slap somebody, what's the harm? Not much. But you walk up and slap the wrong person on the wrong day, they make a fist, you pull a knife. They pull a gun, whatever, right? It's an escalation of force issue. And so they have created these mechanisms to try and stop that sort of stuff.
Right. And you see in the news sometimes that people want to punish certain people to the fullest extent of the law.
Yeah.
Especially when you're the victim. If you're a family member of the victim, you want to see that punished because you think that's how you'll get your closure. If you're a family member of the accused, of a criminal defendant, you see compassion.
Sure.
Right? You see change potentially in that person. You see the best.
Well,
it's just how it is. There's two competing sides.
Correct. And that's the thing that I always thought about, and I think I talked about this. I always tried to have grace because I remembered that these people, whether it be defendant or whatever, this is probably one of the worst days of their lives.
Right.
And I, have to try to remember my worst day, many of them, and how would I have wanted somebody to treat me?
We had that one potential client come in and talk to us this week that he was looking for an attorney that would treat him like a son, like a brother. He just felt like he wasn't getting that from his current attorney.
Correct.
And that's how he phrased it. And after talking to us for a little bit, he said, wow, I can see that you guys care. You're treating me different. And it's hard because we see this all the time. So the stress, we have people come in and they're just like
wound up.
If you plug them into a stress machine, they'd be running,
They could power my house.
They could power the house. They're just have so many questions and they don't know how to organize them.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? I need this to go away. All right, it'll go away eventually,
Sure.
Because we see it and it's like, oh, this is another case for us. So it's hard to.
And we also see from the 10,000 foot view, like what are the issues, right? This person only sees I'm face down on the ground being charged with this, and then when you look at the probable cause affidavit, you're like, yeah, but your search and seizure rights were violated.
And unfortunately, I can't take care of this right now today. You do have to wait for a process to go through.
Sure, and that's the other element that ties into when you're dealing with charges that, let's say, may be frivolous after the fact. When you look at when you filter the charges and the facts through the constitutional protections, that evidence is getting excluded. So now the charges can't properly stand. Right, the table analogy. They don't have
Another analogy, baby.
up. I don't know why you don't like them, but they're good. They help me understand.
You had a new one this week that you told me about, talking about a suspended sentence, where sometimes we have people that get suspended sentences where you don't have to go to jail now if you don't get in trouble. So you said you were explaining it to a client that it's like pushing pause, and you're going through the conveyor belt, and if you stay with everything, there's a trap door, and it'll drop, and those charges will just drop into the netherworld.
Disappear into the ether, and you never have to do them. However, comma, pause for effect. If, in fact, you do not do what the court requires you to do, or you do things that you are legally not permitted to do,
The conveyor belt will take you straight to hell.
no.
Oh.
It takes you straight to imposition of sentence.
That's hell, baby.
It is not great. Have you ever been to jail?
No. Well, as a visitor.
So you've never been in jail in handcuffs? Or
Oh, no.
forced to sleep on a little thin mat?
No, I've been taken there as a visitor to a cop and talking to clients there, but not in a.
I haven't been to jail against my will recently. I have been to
We go to jail a lot.
I go to jail a couple times a week at least. I went to prison recently too. That time was also not against my will. I've been to jail against my will 5 separate occasions. Not too long though.
Kansas. Las Vegas.
No,
You're-
I was
you're
detained.
clean now. You're
I was
clean now.
detained, but I did not get arrested.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Is that 5 minutes? No, dude.
All right. So real quick, let's talk about another one.
We're going to our listener question.
Yeah. A listener question, have either of you represented a celebrity or high status figure before in a trial or case? If so, how was it? If not, is there a celebrity case you wish you could be a part of? So we have a case
Against a celebrity.
against a celebrity,
Another rapper.
another rapper, Blueface, baby.
Blueface came here to Vegas and shot.
Was it him or was it one of his people?
It was him and his people.
Okay. So there was an altercation at an establishment and a...
Why do they call them gentlemen's clubs?
Because that's where gentlemen go, obviously, to do gentlemanly things. Not unlike other gentlemen. I have no idea. I'm just making stuff up, man. Okay, so anyway, Blueface goes to this club. An altercation occurs, and as sometimes occurs in these instances, alcohol was probably involved. Force escalated, and instead of just being words, it turned into fists, and from fists, it turned into bullets. Our client was shot, thankfully.
In the hand.
In the hand, and he retained his ability to use his hand. He was injured, obviously, because getting shot anywhere doesn't feel good. But it wasn't a situation that resulted, as it could have, where he could have died or he could have lost his entire hand. And so we have a case against Blueface, but not for Blueface.
No, haven't represented a celebrity figure that I can.
So it's also a weird thing, right? Because people become sort of local celebrities due to, not celebrities, it's not fame, it's infamy, right? Like due to some of their charges. We have 4 or 5 defendants right now who made the Review Journal.
Right.
Their picture was posted on there. I've had local news outlets reach out to me for comment. I'm absolutely not saying anything to them. Not because, I couldn't tell them about the case, but it's just not productive. It's not going to help anybody. They're just fishing for content, and they can get that from the public record. Actually, we closed a case out today that was in the Review Journal, where it's interesting because I was in lower level arraignments for an initial appearance. I got picked up for that gun case that we have tomorrow on for sentencing, and the gal was in there having her initial appearance, and they'd set the bond really high because she was charged with DUI death originally, and that is a big deal because she was a bus driver. And so, the news views certain facts of crimes as maybe more egregious, and so they decide they want to report on that. I don't really know how they pick it because, bad stuff happens every day, it seems like, but only some of the cases get talked about reported on.
I think they put out a ton of stuff, and just some stuff gets
Traction.
Sure. I mean, that's the same as posting our videos. We never know which one's gonna, take off a little bit and which one's gonna tank to the ground.
Yeah, well,
Hopefully, we said some funny stuff today.
hopefully. Okay, so let's say if we haven't had a celebrity, what celebrity would you want to represent? I'll tell you one, but obviously it would have been before I was.
Mayor of Flavortown.
Oh man, I'd represent Guy Fieri.
wish.
Because we both love pineapple on pizza. It's so good. No,
Blonde hair too.
yeah, but I don't dye mine. The sun does that for me. I would have wanted to represent Robert Downey Jr. He had those charges back in the day before he kind of sorted his life out. I don't know if you guys remember it.
Drug charges?
Drugs, yeah. He was addicted to cocaine, I believe. I think he got like a DUI. There was a whole ton of stuff. His life was sort of spiraling out of control for two reasons. One, I like him as an actor. I think the interviews I've seen of him, he seems like he's hilarious, and I like funny people. So I would imagine having a funny client would be fun. And two, that dude was as public as you can get with such a negative situation. His life was getting screwed up. He was losing his jobs, like acting roles or whatever. Completely did a 180. And now, he was in Tropic Thunder.
What a movie.
Great movie.
Hey, sometimes,
And he's freaking Iron Man, bro.
and he's Iron Man. Hey, sometimes criminal charges for drugs can help somebody change their life.
I mean, yeah,
Maybe
it can.
they can. There are programs that are designed to help that.
Well, it's not just the programs. It's the desire of the individual.
That is the biggest.
The number one
Part of
concern,
it.
right? Like I see people who are addicted every single day. And I see people who used to be addicted or still are addicted, because there's the whole thing that you're always in treatment, you're always in recovery, even if
Sure.
one of my favorite people is one of my jiu-jitsu instructors, actually, and he's very public about this. He battled addiction for quite a long time, and now this dude, is competing in UFC Fight Pass. Like, he's probably on his way to some big stuff in the UFC world and in the jiu-jitsu world, which is a complicated and difficult thing to do. And you look at his trajectory, he was looking at some serious problems. And at the point, he was already a black belt. He was already a great fighter. He had the makings of a legend, and he didn't let that get in his way. He beat his own demons because he wanted to. And I think that's what truly it comes down to, whether it be that or just, somebody who's not doing something like that, somebody who just wants to have a normal life and not be arrested and go to prison.
Yeah, there's an internal element there
Sure.
that we just.
And if you don't understand it, you don't understand. And I'm not claiming to understand because I don't have that issue. I'm so fortunate, especially considering some of my family members. Addiction's been an issue in my family. My mom, some pretty serious negative stuff. So good for me. I'm glad. And I'm not claiming to get it, but I see it a lot and it seems to suck. So who would you represent?
Oh wow, back on that, huh?
I want to know, right? You got to answer the listener question, bro.
I would have loved to represent Scotty Scheffler because I'm a huge golf fan. He could have given me some tips, and we just talked about him. And man, that seemed like an easy case.
I should have known he was going to say that.
Hey, I love tennis and golf. I was thinking Roger Federer, but
Tennis?
yeah,
What?
yeah.
Who's your favorite presidential candidate who's gotten some sweet photos taking tennis, playing tennis?
Oh wow.
With that dump truck he's got.
I thought we weren't going to talk about him, but
No, I'm not saying his name. I'm just saying that photo is dope. It's so funny. They should call him Dumpy instead of Trumpy, bro. Whoops. You can cut that if you
I think there's pictures of our current president playing tennis as well. So, oh sure,
I'm pretty sure there's one of Obama playing tennis, right?
sure.
Is that like a thing that presidential? Is it a presidential sport? Is that why I don't like it or understand it? I did see Nadal play Federer in Dubai one time. I just happened to be in Dubai during law school and went to a tennis match. It was fine. I just really did not understand the noises they make.
Yeah. First podcast I ever edited was a guy who would interview female tennis players, and I picked up none of it.
Where did we go
You want to
wrong.
represent Scheffler.
Scheffler, dude, he all of the videos that have come out since have just made him look like the nerdiest, nicest guy. And as a note, we'll say his last 8 tournaments, he's won 5 of them. First place in 5 of them.
Is that good or something?
Second place in 2, and tied for 8th in 1 the weekend he got arrested.
Wait a minute. I thought it was 20th. Remember, didn't somebody correct you on this?
Yeah, it was actually tied for 8th. I was wrong. That was his worst outing, was that tournament where he happened to have to go to jail.
So taking it back to Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, is that enough? Like showing that he did this good on all of these, would that be enough of a showing to establish some sort of damages for something that's amorphous like potential earnings?
That's a question for a jury member.
It's
Austin?
a question of fact.
Austin, if you were a jury member, what would you say? If he finished first 5 times, second 2 times, tied for 8th, the only time he was arrested, what would you think? Is that enough evidence?
Give us a real opinion here. Ignore Shane's feelings the way that I do all the time.
I'm almost wondering if I'd even be selected for jury because I would probably be biased, but I don't care about rich people.
Oh,
wow.
got the communist
What
in
an
the
answer.
room.
But do you think he was affected?
Well, yeah, clearly, if he's playing so good and he's arguably the top player in golf, and then he gets arrested and now he's
Sure.
instantly dropping down.
Well, then if he's affected, is that enough to say that, yes, this conduct, because it affected him on this day, should be bootstrapped and tied in, and you can include loss of wages?
In the context of that, like what happened.
And so what, the difference was $3 million, right? He got 500,000 and he would have got 3.5 mil. There you go. Boom. That's how it's done.
But he could have gotten second place, which is only like $1 million. So
Right. Okay, so then you take the lowest, but either way, that's an extra $500,000 in damages.
I don't get lower than second.
Never.
Well,
Can't see me. Can't see me in 8th place.
when we're recording this, the U.S. Open starts tomorrow. So maybe this will be the
That's
test.
tennis, right?
No, the U.S. Open of golf starts tomorrow.
There is a U.S. Open of tennis.
There is. But this
Who's
is
your favorite tennis player of all time?
Roger Federer.
Bad boy Johnny McEnroe, bro.
He was cool.
Get out of here. And Kornikova.
Okay.
Great tennis player.
Yeah, maybe. Sure.
She was really good.
Better than me. U.S. Open starts tomorrow. Pinehurst, North Carolina. Beautiful course, beautiful city.
Sure. Who you rooting for? Who do you want to win?
I do like Scotty Scheffler.
Jesus.
I'm a fan. He's just
Scotty, please just call Shane.
No.
He's been sending you emails and you're not responding. It's like Stan from Eminem. Dear Scotty, I wrote you 5 letters. Why haven't you responded?
I like me and my wife love rooting for Scotty. I also like all of the players that have gone to UNLV. Adam Scott is maybe the most famous one. I don't know if you guys have heard of any golfers.
Scotty,
Adam Scott,
picking up a theme here, bro.
Charlie Hoffman. Shout out Charlie Hoffman.
Those are people that are at the PGA right now?
Charlie's kind of on his way out. Adam Scott's didn't qualify for the U.S. Open.
Okay. But still, very good golfer.
These are amongst the top.
Have you ever played with him?
No, I'm not even close to good enough to.
You
have
both went
played
to the
with these
same
people.
college? I don't know, dude. Maybe it's a small town.
No,
That's not an absurd question. Come on.
UNLV's a big school.
Whatever. All right.
Go Tiger Woods too.
Go Tiger Woods.
Tigers
I'm trying to
in
think
it
of-
this weekend.
Oh,
I think we're way over time.
What's that dude's name? The bad boy of golf. The dude that gets wasted and like
John Daly.
John Daly. He's my favorite. I've seen some of his interviews when he's just hammered on the course. Oh my God. If you guys want something real funny to watch, Google John Daly speaking. It's brilliant.
His kid is now in college, starting to kind of hopefully.
Doesn't he also have a mullet?
He's had one, yeah.
Oh man, that's so good.
I don't know if he
All right.
currently has one, but
Golf, grow mullets, don't talk to the cops, don't commit crimes. Thanks, guys. We appreciate you watching us.
listen to Tangled Rights.
Like, subscribe, updoot, whatever it is that you do. We'll see you next week.